How you doing, folks? You're watching Onward with Onrie Live, and I'm your host, Onrie Compen. Today, we have a very fascinating guest in the house. She is a writer and editor from Minnesota. She has worked on a number of licensed projects as well as her own projects as well, and it is my pleasure to have her on the show. Everyone, please welcome KATY REX. KATY,
Hi.
welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Why don't you do us a favor? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, what you worked on. And yeah,
Wow.
spotlight's on you.
No, not like a big question or anything. Just my entire identity. Sure, no problem. I am a writer. I'm from Minnesota. We said those things. I write mostly full time. I also work with my small zoo because I have a lot of pets. One of whom I brought on the show.
Yes,
Kazul,
let's see.
Come say hi.
Let's see her.
This is Kazul. She do we swear on this show?
Yes, swear, whatever you want to say.
She took a big shit on this bed earlier, so I've had to change the linens. Clearly, she's pretty proud of herself.
How old is she?
She's probably like 3-ish.
Oh wow! And how many pets you get at your house?
I've got I say a dog and a half because my neighbor's dog is my dog's best friend, and she comes over to my house most days. So a dog and a half. They're both pretty big, 50, 60-pound dogs. Oh, I think you can actually kind of see. Yeah, Trillian, I'm moving you. That's Trillian.
Oh, okay. That's your cat?
Yep, and then you can see way back that way.
Uh-huh.
That's her daughter.
Ah.
And there's a third cat. Princess
hiding
Buttercup.
Somewhere? Oh, okay.
I'm sure she's downstairs. She prefers those windows, you know. And
So
then I've got 2 axolotls too.
You got a full house.
I do.
So here's a question for you. How does this affect your creative life as a writer, like having so many animals around?
So it's actually a pretty significant part of my process, as conceited and gross as that just sounded.
Not at all. Not at all.
I like to bounce my ideas, but I'm also pretty self-centered and not super into the kind of bouncing of my ideas that involves people telling me what to do. So pets are actually perfect for my particular brand of conceitedness. I talk to them. I interpret their facial expressions as approving or disapproving, and I workshop my things from there. It's weirdly productive.
And here's the thing I'll say, as a lifelong pet lover and owner of a number of cats throughout my life, cats actually understand what you say to them. They're very, very smart animals. Mm-hmm. And so are bearded dragons. Are also incredibly smart animals. And
we're still feeling it out.
Really? After 3 years?
Oh, no. So she's probably 3, but I only got her in January.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you guys are, this is still a new relationship.
Yep.
Yeah. Right on. And yeah, that's really cool that you have that creative inspiration from animals. So let's now dig into your origins. Where did your love of writing start, and how did it branch off into comics and lead into everything you're doing now?
Yeah, I was always a reader, really big reader. I did a weird thing in elementary school. I went to what was supposed to be sort of a Montessori style school where you're supposed to make your own schedule and be a self-directed learner. And what that ended up meaning is that I didn't have teachers that were expecting me to do certain things at certain times. And the way I went with that, starting in about 1st grade, is I just went to the library, and nobody knew if I was supposed to be there. So I just stayed there all day for like 3 years. I am really bad at math now, to this day, because I didn't do like the memorizing your times tables that you're supposed to do that sets that foundational learning. I'm trying because I would like to be better than I am at math, at science, at every subject that's not reading.
I would love for you to repeat that to my son, because we're having that same problem with him right now with the remote learning, because I've had to really try. It takes so much just to get even an ounce of effort out of him, and it's maddening sometimes, and it drives me crazy, because this stuff is important. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do, you know.
Yeah, well, it'll definitely fuck you up later in life.
Absolutely.
But it's one thing I found about science anyway, is that schools are not finding the most interesting shit. So I'm reading a book right now. It's called Cannibalism by Bill Shutt, and I've only just gotten to the human history of cannibalism, because Bill is a zoologist, and so he starts with all of the different ways that cannibalism exists in the animal kingdom. So like sexual cannibalism.
From the praying mantis. Yeah.
Right. Mantises, there are some spiders. And it turns out that praying mantises may not be as interested in consuming their mates in non-lab conditions. But there's also a type of snail where when they do sex, they have both genitals. So they're kind of doing both at the same time and impregnating each other. And every once in a while in that horrible mess, somebody's dick gets chewed off. And this is the kind of science I would have loved to learn when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I would not have been uninterested in that. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
So what is the history of cannibalism among humans? Where does it start?
So I'm really at the very beginning of this
sure.
concept, and there are a few reasons that people have historically eaten each other. When cultures have been accepting of cannibalism, so it hasn't been like Dire Straits Dahmer party stuff. Donner, not Dahmer, totally different murderer. Yeah. So when it hasn't been in dire straits, when cultures have incorporated cannibalism into part of their existence, it's been either to honor the dead person, or to take some component of them. Like you might, in a war, eat your enemies so that you can gain their strength and power and use it against them.
Right. That's pretty fucking crazy. Any particular region of the planet that this like originated from, or was more dominant than others?
I haven't gotten
you haven't gotten that far yet.
No.
Okay.
Right. I did get a little bit about the Donner Party, but not as, apparently they weren't actually that far away from being with a civilization. They just didn't know that they could have gone a little further and then not eaten each other.
It's pretty crazy how close we can be sometimes. So
right?
So you were saying you were in the library. You spent a lot of time in the library,
mm-hmm.
and you also got into Montessori stuff, which is that approach to learning. My wife and I are very familiar with it. We were actually thinking about getting our son into that, but instead we ended up putting him in a Russian daycare, which was much more regimented, and we kind of had a sense of everything. But I find the thing now, here's the problem I have now. I have a son who's unable to self-manage. Like, we literally need to walk him through everything. He needs to constantly be engaged, whereas
mm-hmm.
you had the opposite. And here you are in these libraries, and you're spending all this time here. What were you reading, and how did it really help develop this love for writing?
I was reading just a lot of fantasy novels, not like Harlequin sexy fantasy, but like dragons and unicorns fantasy. I was into really anything supernatural, anything kind of witchy. Ella Enchanted was a really big one for me. And then my dragon, her name is Kazul because of a Patricia Reed book dealing with dragons. It was a really big one for me. I really liked princesses, but I liked the princesses that could stand up for themselves.
Absolutely. You know, I'm rewatching The Tudors right now.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that show?
No, but I have a lot of opinion. I've seen part of season 1.
Okay.
But I'm actually just like a Tudor history nerd. It's kind of my favorite era. So I have a lot of opinions about the things they're doing wrong.
Oh, really? So what would you say? I just finished season 1. So what would you say? What bothered you? Like, what did you feel they were doing wrong?
I mean, I think a lot of what bothered me was aesthetic. I don't think that it's super likely that King Henry's sister was a
drunkard.
No, she totally was, like, the whole family, total alcoholics, whatever. She probably didn't look like that. Like, she probably wasn't Hollywood hot, and tans were not sexy at the time. That was not part of their standard of beauty. And they certainly wouldn't have a tan that, like, didn't have tan lines, because how would she have gotten that? Because there's a lot of nudity in the Tudor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I think that there's something to be said about that, because even King Henry himself was overweight, and when he died, he was this bulbous, overweight, you know,
big nasty man with a stinky leg. Yeah,
exactly. But I think what helped sell it was the sex appeal, because even Anne Boleyn, would she have like 6 fingers or something?
I mean, she wore really long sleeves so you couldn't see them, right?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Totally. She brought a couple of fashions to court. One was really long sleeves, so you couldn't see her extra finger, which may or may not have existed, depending on which historians you talk to. And she wore the bee necklace, the famous pearl necklace, possibly to cover a giant mole on her neck that was maybe where Satan entered her body. Because she was a witch, right?
Well, you know, and that's what I found so engaging about it, is the fact that, okay, they looked at that and they're like, and I think that the gross aspects of it sound more interesting on paper than they do on the big screen, because, like, you know, when we're talking about sex appeal, everybody's got their own taste, sure, but, like, you know, I think that the sex appeal aspect of it, I go into it knowing that it's exaggerated and that that's not how people looked back then. And, you know, like Henry Cavill.
I have a really hard time with a Tudor era Brazilian wax.
Yes, I understand
That's too far.
Yeah.
That's like not just glamming up what was already there. That's like, no.
Yeah, find a different way to portray that, the beauty of that era.
Right.
In a more honest way.
Or maybe I'm just a pube snob.
Pube snob. I think that's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that. Pube snob.
I think it's the first time I've ever said it.
Oh, there you go. See, first time for everything. Only on Onward with Onrie can this happen. So, comics. Let's talk comics.
Yeah.
So, what was so you were reading a lot of fantasy books.
Mm-hmm.
When did you come across comics? What was your first comic?
My parents were, we did road trips every summer, which was really cool. For 2 weeks, we would put the tent trailer on the back of the van and drive everywhere. And my parents would always pick up just a buttload of comics for us to read in the car on the road. And it was never anything particularly sequential.
Yeah, not a whole run of a comic. It would just be like a bunch of random single issues. Yeah,
it was a lot of Donald Duck stuff, Scrooge, and it was a lot of just so much Archie comics, which I loved, but gave me a totally unrealistic expectation for high school. I definitely thought being a teenager was like being in an Archie comic, and that was sort of a rude awakening at one point.
You know what? I kind of felt like that too about 80s movies, because I grew up watching Weird Science, Better Off Dead, and all those high school movies, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went into high school at the time that Grosse Pointe Blank came out, and like I was like, so that's what high school's like. And it's just really my entire high school experience ended up being this overly dramatic thing that it never needed to be because of those fucking movies.
Okay, but I thought that not only were they going to be like Archie, but that I was Betty.
Oh, okay. All right. You really well, I was identified with John Cusack, and I didn't look. I don't look anything like John Cusack at all.
But he's like a cool guy.
Yeah, he's the cool guy, but he's always like down on his luck. Like when I went back and I rewatched Better Off Dead like a couple weeks ago, and I still love that movie because of my attachment to it. But like the hangups and everything, it was all relatable at the time. But then it's like we kind of become the things that we admire in characters from fiction. It's like everybody has that superhero they can identify with.
But Betty is so pure and she is so wholesome. And that was a thing that I maybe shouldn't have expected of myself.
Well, yeah, then you grow up and you realize that you're nothing like those characters. You're you, and that's the best thing to be. Absolutely. Okay, so Archie, that was what really resonated with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when did you go off on your own and decide I'm a writer?
So I started doing comics press. And I was running endoftheuniversecomics.com. And I was really interested because I was a literature major. And I was interested in sequential art and how that relates to more traditional literature and how both of those things, sequential art and traditional literature, relate to film. Because they're all, interconnected, and I'm interested in studying the narratives. And as a result, I just sort of started analyzing it for whatever people were interested in reading what I had to say.
Mm.
And then I started, and when I started being press, I could not imagine writing comics because I couldn't imagine thinking that anything I had to say was going to matter more than what's already out there. And that's a thing I still struggle with because I think there's a lot of amazing things already out there.
I can totally relate to that. I feel the same way. It's really hard to come in and add something new to, say, the superhero genre. You have to find a way to insert yourself into the story. And, I know that there are plenty of creators out there who will disagree with me and will say, well, there is a way to do it. You just haven't thought about it yet. And they're right too, but I think that I totally get that.
I think we've not only done all the superhero narratives as a culture, but I think we've deconstructed all the superhero narratives and done all of the anti-hero narratives too, in a lot of ways.
I agree. I mean, like, how many more Batman stories? Well, we do need to see the origin of Batman again. I don't think we've seen that enough times.
No, that's true.
That needs to be revisited.
I don't remember how that goes.
Well, you'll have to pick up any Batman issue to find out over and over again. It was just beaten over your head by countless writers. But it's interesting though, because we say this, and yet sometimes you'll come across a run by a creator out there that's just like, wow, they actually figured it out. And I think that, but I have more fun personally, and I think you do too, probably, tackling your own projects or working in an arena that is a little bit less deconstructed than, say, the superhero lore. Because I noticed that, among your credits, you've worked on licensed products, like including Doctor Who. So what was that like? What did you bring to the table in that regard? And how did you come in and say, okay, I'm going to take this license thing and I'm going to, give my spin on it?
So I think my favorite of my licensed works is Charmed. And I think that the reason that was so much fun for me was because there was not a lot of development in the area that I was expanding on. In the show, there's a point at which a couple couple of seasons in, they discover that there's a magical school. And then they sort of come back and revisit the school every few episodes, but there's not a ton in canon about the school structure, how they find students, that sort of thing. And so I was able to kind of put my own narrative in there. And as you can tell from the other book that or rather my indie book, as you can tell from Jade Street, I do really like to write.
Sorry.
No worries.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go on.
No worries.
My mom brought I bring my kid here to my parents' house. I'm in my old bedroom right now, and my mom is working with him on school, and she forgot to take the phone out. But go on.
You're fine.
I totally
You're fine.
I feel so embarrassed. I'm sorry.
No.
So you were talking about your Jade Street, right?
I like writing girls, especially teenage girls, and I like writing magic. And so Charmed was really natural after Jade Street.
Yeah. And I relate to that in the sense that I have to openly say this without any offense to anybody out there, but I have a hard time writing women. Because it's harder for me there's genetically, we think differently as a sex, and you don't think so?
No.
Really? Huh. Because that's always been my thinking. Maybe that's something I have to break my own mold from. It's just like, when we look at it culturally, and the way we've been divided, it's always just kind of been in my head that this is how things are. And not to say that all women are one way and all men are another way. I think that there are a lot of women who have similarities to a lot of men. And to be honest with you, lately I've been finding that men typically have this vibe of being more gung-ho and masculine, but lately I've been realizing among my female contemporaries that it's the women who are much more like gung-ho than the men are. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody or call anybody out, but that's always just something that I've had a hard time kind of identifying with, and I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm right here. So it's just something, it's like my own stigma that I have to work through, but you say otherwise. Why otherwise?
So the more I think about sex and gender, which are very separate concepts, according to most sociologists, and really kind of our social consensus in the year 2020, when I think about sex and gender, I am aware that there are more people that are born that are neither XX nor XY chromosomally. And those people may or may not present as intersex physically. But from a purely genetic standpoint, we are less binary than people seem to assume, because of so many people who are what we previously thought was sort of an anomaly. But then additionally, when we think about our testosterone and hormonal balances, those things can be so different for different people, regardless of their sex. It's kind of just sort of people who were born male may tend to have more testosterone, but these are things that can be manipulated by circumstance, by medicine, and the concept of gender, man and woman versus male and female. The more I think about that, the less of an idea I have of what that means. What makes me a woman?
So what does? Because
fuck if I know.
But do you see yourself in your characters when you decide okay, I want to write female characters? Well, if you're saying that there's no difference. Why?
I didn't say that exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
The difference is difficult and quantifiable and not binary. But I've always tended to be relatively femme. And additionally, I was raised in a household of, well, my mom has always been a feminist. And so part of being taught about being a woman was being aware of the ways that women and men are treated differently by society and really internalizing that. So in a lot of ways that formed my gender identity. So.
And I understand that, by the way, because like, I was just talking with a friend of mine today who's, professional in the industry, female. And it's funny because we talk about our experiences with people we know in the business and some of the things that can happen, particularly to women at conventions. Men and women do get treated completely different. And, the kinds of things that can happen and that women have to deal with, particularly in this male-driven workplace, and just any industry you're talking about, is dramatically different than, say, what I have to deal with. Like if you see an attractive woman in the comic scene, there's a chance that somebody is saying something or thinking something inappropriately about them, where me, I'm a fat bald guy. Nobody's really thinking about hitting on me.
Well, and that's another thing for women, especially, is whether or not we are read as women, whether or not we are read as attractive or feminine women. There's a lot that goes into not only how we intend to present ourselves, but how once we are out in public, we are treated, regardless of how we feel about ourselves. I could, for instance, feel like a man on the inside and look like this, and no one would know. And so no one would treat me like a man. And so that contributes to a person's gender identity.
So you're saying that there's more to us than just one binary thing. There's multiple us's living within us.
That's a component, yes. And also our identity has to, by definition, be informed not only by how we feel, but how we react to the ways that we are treated.
That's interesting. And another reason why I brought it back to an instinctual thing is because I think about stuff as a parent. See, my wife and I, we were both raising two kids, and we both handle things differently. She internalizes a lot more and takes more. She carries more guilt. And I've got a lot of female friends who are also moms now, and they tend to do the same thing. It's just it's that motherly thing where being a mom is such a sacred thing. We've
been told that. And we've been raised our entire lives to believe that being a mom is a sacred thing. And you weren't told that about being a dad, right? Well, nobody asks dudes.
I feel differently about. I'm not saying that there's a genetic reason for this. I didn't shoot a kid out of my penis. You kind of did. I did. Hey, there we go. Yes, but I didn't go through the process of building that dependence reliance that goes on genetically. Like I can't carry a baby in my body. Yeah, right. I didn't know that. I appreciate the fact that you were so open to share that just now. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there at all.
I'm not on the spot. I don't have a uterus.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for being comfortable enough to share that. But as somebody that didn't have to do that, I understand what connection my wife had, and the first 9 months are always very difficult because the baby is totally reliant on the mom. He doesn't give a fuck about me. Neither of them did. My 2-year-old, he's like just coming around to the idea that like I can put him to bed and that I can do things with him. And I've always, yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
I think from a human evolution, biology perspective, it's very true that whoever is there for a child and is their physical source of comfort, of food, of shelter, of cleanliness, that person is going to be more closely connected to them. But I don't think that has anything to do with their sex.
Yeah, no, I get you. I hear and then I look at, and I see where you were kind of going with it, with like the whole thing about being a father and that kind of role being kind of minimized, like, oh, it's not seen as a sacred thing.
Right. And it's kind of gross how our culture diminishes fatherhood.
Well, at least we have Father's Day, and it's coming up soon. And I've already come up with what I'm going to get for Father's Day. But the way I see it as myself as a father, see, my dad was the provider, right? And I think things have changed now in the sense that, women are playing a more providing role in society now.
You mean financially?
Financially,
okay.
Yes, of course. The women are in more of a position now than they were, say, 20 or 30 years ago to provide and to do things that, were typically the man's responsibility back in, say, the 70s or 80s when I was growing up. So
well, and our society increasingly requires a dual income household in order to make having a family doable
possible.
At all.
Oh, yeah. That's that is without question, especially nowadays. Like, we both got to be working, and it's hard, But I've always seen the role of a father is to lead by example. Your kids are going to always follow you no matter what. Now, the mom, from what I see it as, not necessarily what is or whatever, just kind of like my own internal takeaway from it is the mom is the safe place, so to speak, that no matter what you do, your mother is always going to love you, whereas your father is going to teach you. And when you fuck up, your dad's going to be there to set you on the right path. And
I'm familiar with that model of parenting, but I don't think I personally. So I'm actually in the process of getting certified for foster care.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is one of my foster kids' rooms. That's why I'm on a bunk bed right now.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I
didn't know. That is really awesome.
But I 0% ever want to be in a circumstance where I'm telling my kid, you fucked up, just wait until your father sees what you did. If my kid fucks up, I'm going to deal with it. And if my partner is around when my kid fucks up, I hope my partner would deal with it, regardless of gender roles.
No, absolutely. And I think that from that point of view, I think that it definitely opens up the, I don't think it's always as clear cut as that, to just say that it's always one thing or the other. If my wife is in a situation where she can, discipline or not discipline or correct or whatever you want to call it, if she can correct the improper behavior when I'm not around, she absolutely will. And most of the time ends up having to, because I'm usually on the road going to conventions and, I'm not there anyway. But, I find it too with boys, my boys in particular have a really hard time listening to my wife. Like, they don't respond to her, but they will respond to me coming in there into the room. And I don't know what that is. I don't know why that's the case.
That's really fucked up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is pretty fucked up.
I'm not trying to criticize your parenting.
No, it's fine. It's like, cool. You see it differently. That's cool. So you have foster kids?
No, not yet. Next month,
yet, but probably. You're preparing for it.
Yep.
That's excellent. I think that's really great that you decided to do this.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it's great. It's always been my plan, even when I had a uterus. And I just got a variance legally to keep my lizard, because my county does restrict foster kids under 6 from being placed in homes that keep chickens, ducks, or lizards. So I got a special exception for my little beardy girl, and I'm pretty happy about it, even though she shit on the bed.
It's all right. Those things happen, right? We forgive those things.
Right. I mean, the kid's going to do it at some point, right?
Absolutely. It happens more often than you think.
As long as I'm not the one shitting in the bed, I think I'm winning.
Yeah, there you go. So when it comes to writing, what's on your agenda these days?
So I'm actually reading that cannibalism book because of a project that I can't say a lot more about, but
Sure.
it's going to be really fun. And I wonder if I should say that I'm working on a project that may or may not be that same one with Matt Miner.
Oh, right on. Awesome.
Yeah, he's an incredible writer and a very good friend, and
Yeah.
working with him is very thrilling.
Yeah.
I'm working also on a totally separate thing with Andrew Peepoy, the artist.
I know Andrew Peepoy. Yeah, he's a very talented inker and artist.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got a pretty fun, kind of zany story coming up soon that I'm also don't have enough official things to name drop it. Those are the two big things, and then I'm starting a collaboration with a local country music artist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're gonna make a comic book together because she's amazing.
That's cool. What's are you guys still kind of coming up with the idea, or do you guys know what you're gonna
We're
do?
still pretty early stages, and I maybe even shouldn't be bragging about how excited I am to work with her yet. But it's Ellie Perlberg.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna look up her Twitter real quick so that I can drop her Twitter
just
name.
drop her name, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because she's amazing. She's a really amazing singer, but she's also a really amazing songwriter, which is, some next level shit.
Yeah, I mean, songwriting's that is some tough stuff. I mean, being able to write a song that has meaning on a story level and make it an actual good song is that's challenging.
Yeah, it is. So her Twitter is Ellie Pearl Music, PERL, no A. So if anybody wants to go check out Ellie and how amazing she is,
I want to check
trying
it.
to get into a box.
I want to check it out. How do I spell her name again?
Ellie, ELLIE. Pearl, PERL Music.
Okay, cool.
And she's super fantastic, and I'm excited to be doing anything at all with her. So
that's excellent. So so you are you still working with Black Mass Studios?
I have not done anything with them recently. But whenever Diamond is doing everything again, the Jade Street Protection Services trade paperback should be coming out soonish.
Oh, okay, right on. Yeah, and
I'm not really sure what the post-COVID printing schedule is, but
yeah, I know that distribution has already begun today. So today is the first day of Diamond resuming everything, and new comics are out there, and so yeah, people are hopefully flocking to shops and buying up stuff and seeing what they missed. So what kind of comics are you reading now?
I haven't read a comic in a good 2 weeks because I've been reading my
your book, yeah.
Right. Well, and just generally, I've been trying to read more nonfiction because I think that it contributes to my abilities as a writer to just know shit.
Absolutely, yeah. When that was something I wanted to kind of touch on earlier, because it's like when we go into knowing and not knowing, it's like you can either learn by reading about something or by actually having the experiences. And I think that given our situation that we're writers, we tend to read more because that's how we learn more, as opposed to, but I think experience is also, there's a lot to be said about experience too, like getting out there and, trying things and learning new skills. Like there's something to be said about that too. So
for sure. Yeah. I'm actually really bad at writing fight scenes because I don't internalize physicality in the same way. So I've actually been trying to learn how to fight.
Oh, okay. So you're
30-something white girl. I'm taking karate classes.
Really? Where are
yeah,
you? What kind of what form of karate are you taking?
so it's with the National Karate Academy, and they've obviously stopped having classes
Sure,
recently.
sure.
Um, and for some reason, they're calling themselves Korean Karate. And I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that's just Taekwondo.
Yes.
And
But
I
it's
don't know
okay.
why they're not calling it that. That's their business. They're calling it karate, and it's not. But it is teaching me how to better internalize that physicality.
Have you been practicing a long time?
No, this has been maybe a year.
Okay.
I'm definitely still a white belt. I am in a class with small children. I am very tall and awkward in this class with small children. They could probably all kick my ass, mostly because they have a lot more energy than me. I have like a couple of feet on them, but
So do you like? I'm assuming you're getting into foster care. You're taking classes with kids. Do you relate really well to kids? Do you like spending time with children a lot?
yeah. I before I was a writer, I was taking courses to be a grade school teacher, and I've been a nanny off and on for a decade of my life. Not for 5 years, but prior to that, it was a good decade. Because I'm very old now.
You don't look that old to me.
I appreciate that.
So, what made you get away from it and get into writing and comics?
Well, partly I have just a really garbage immune system, which makes working in an elementary school really hard. I interned in an elementary school for about a semester, and I was just sick all the time. And changing my diet didn't help, and continuing to be exposed to children, aka tiny germ factories, didn't help. So I just physically think that that's one of the reasons that I can't be a teacher in the way I would probably have liked to.
That's totally understandable. Now, going into the whole comic scene, you go into writing. What is the ideal writing environment for you in terms of you got a good productive night? What's it look like for you? Or a day, or when do you prefer to work? How does it, when do the best ideas come to you?
I get a lot of good ideas as I'm falling asleep, so I try to write them down. But evening in general is better for me. I need somebody who is better than me to cut me off from consuming media, because otherwise I will pretend to myself and just total self-delude into believing that I'm watching a Netflix documentary for research. And so I can keep myself on a consuming media rather than producing it kick if I don't try really hard to make myself better at it.
Yeah, I find the same thing with me too. Like whenever I play video games, my wife is always saying aren't you supposed to be working right now? And I'll be like, I am working, damn it. I'm playing Doom.
You're thinking.
I'm thinking, yeah. And it's not something that you could just shit out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because there's so many of us, and there's so many people always trying to break into the business that it's just like what we were saying earlier. It's like you have to find ways, creative ways to set yourself apart from everybody and be different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, is Jade Street, is that done now, or is that going to continue? Oh, okay. And how does it feel having that completed? And
that book was really close to my heart, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm also really excited to be moving on in other directions.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always a relief when you can move on from something and, move on to because it's like you got a completed thing now. And
selfishly and maybe stupidly, I am a little worried I'll be pigeonholed. Because not only am I a girl that writes girls, but I write magical teen girls, and that's not my only interest.
Well,
So,
you've gone on to Doctor Who. You know, Doctor Who is, I mean, it's more time travel based, right? It's not as much magic based, and you're
right.
writing male character. It's a male character, right? Was the one you?
No, I didn't write a doctor.
Oh, you didn't write a doctor. So
No,
what did you write?
I wrote a short story about Jenny, the doctor's daughter.
Oh, okay,
Hmm.
right on. Okay. So when you say I get what you say with pigeonhole, but what's something that would be breaking out of the landscape of what you are known for? What kind of project would you want to do that would just be like, this is something I've never done before, but I am doing it now because it's something I always wanted to do.
Well, my book with Matt is way grosser than anything that I've ever written before, except for maybe I did a short story in an anthology that's one of my favorite things that I've ever written.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also pretty gross.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first page of it starts with just a pretty graphic blowjob, which is not very Sweet Valley High. But so I think sort of exploring the grotesque in a lot of ways is something that interests me.
Yeah, you know, we had a blowjob scene in Yisun Shin in the beginning of our third issue, and my artist at the time was really against illustrating it because he felt like it was, I mean, it was pretty derogatory in some ways, you know, but it's we decided to do that because we were trying to build our characters and do something to advance the story. It wasn't just simply like, hey, we want to be as off the rails as possible and show nudity for the sake of it. I mean,
Right.
hell, you know, I want to see nudity anytime I can see it, but not everybody's going to internalize that the right way. People love to get offended by stuff that, you know,
Well, and frankly,
doesn't hit
it's
them.
hard from a writer's perspective to tell if things are going to be perceived as nudity for nudity's sake or nudity that accomplishes something, or, you know, just a giant bat dong.
Yeah, speaking of that, I can't believe that fucking book sold for $18,000.
Obviously.
Well, it is a first appearance.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's you know, and it's crazy that it got as much. Well, at least they added something new to Batman's lore,
Right.
like showing his dong. That certainly gets it. Well, how did you feel? How did you take that when you first found out about it? Did you?
I mean, it was a pretty nice penis, so that was exciting. I'm just waiting. I think 2020 is the year that they should have Superman take a shit on a glass table.
And what's your take on you know, all that? Like, do you ever see yourself writing superheroes in general? Like, if the right opportunity came your way?
It's something I worry about because I do think that so much ground has been tread, and I think that those publishers have a lot of pressure to keep titles going and keep them with a similar feel, but without retreading the same feelings, without retreading the same stories, you know? And I think that's challenging for them and would also be very challenging for me, especially since I came up through Archie and not through Green Lantern. And so I don't know the entirety of the canon. So long story short, I would love to write for a superhero story, but I don't know what right now. And I would be worried.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because Stan Lee always used to say that you always want to give the illusion of change when it comes to these characters, because at the end of the day, every issue of a comic is somebody's first. And, you know, when you give the illusion of change, you can always kind of start back at the beginning of where the characters are. But the problem I see is that the characters themselves are not really allowed to evolve from their state, and thus you have these characters that are just sort of making the same mistakes over again, having the same experiences over and over again, interacting with the same villains over and over again. And you can bring your twist to it, but once you bring your twist to it, you still have to meet that requirement of coming back to where you started, so that there's no actual change. It's just the illusion of change. So even if they killed off a character, you know that they're going to bring the character back at a certain point, and that kind of defeats the purpose of killing off characters now. Yeah, for sure. I've also seen you at conventions. What has been your role in conventions? Like, do you typically sell your work? Are you doing panels more? Like, what do you?
I've done a medium amount of panels. I've tabled just a handful of times. It's not really my strength because I'm not good at sitting still. I did a few years where I was actually working for the 2000 AD booth at New York and at San Diego, because they're the best. Their books are the best. The people are the best, you know.
Sure.
And I like to go, and I like to see what other people are doing, especially in a looking for collaborators kind of way, not in like trying to figure out what's trendy or like whose idea I can steal, but I like to see who I would like to work with in the future.
Yeah, you're there to network. So you use the convention scene as more of a networking opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, right on. And that's a very valid thing. In fact, I have to say you're probably the first guest I've had on here who's really brought that to our attention, because we're mainly focusing on sales or doing panels and things like that. So you go to networking. So you're going out and partying at night, and not partying, but mingling.
I mean, yeah, but I also love walking the show floor during the day, because I love seeing. We've got an incredible, diverse, vibrant community of creators, and there are a lot of people that have made it to the top echelon, and there are a lot of people who deserve to and haven't yet, and it's really exciting to see these people in their early stages and maybe get them to collaborate with me if they're willing, and just to see what all is out there.
Yeah. And so how do you manage yourself in these situations? Because obviously you're not there to get shit-faced and,
Oh, no, I'm just like a really bad drunk, actually.
Oh, you are? So you do get shit-faced at these things.
I have. It's pretty embarrassing and not good. It's a thing. I actually have stopped drinking recently.
Oh, that's good.
I think
if it's working for you, then that's a good thing.
I think it'll be good going forward.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show now, and it looks like some of our guests had some questions for you. So we'll start from the top. We got a question from Kitsune Windsor. What is your favorite character that you designed?
God. I really like Delia from Charmed. Who else do I really like? I like everybody. The thing is that all of the characters that I've ever written, I try to feel like I am them in some way, so that I can write them accurately. So I don't know. I really like the Jade Street girls. Noemi is obviously like miles cooler than I've ever been, but those girls are really close to my heart. And Emma, a lot of her insecurities are things that I felt and feel. I don't know. I guess that.
Okay. Right on. That's a completely valid response. Well, we're coming to the end of the show now, so why don't you give us a shout out where we can find you, and where we can expect to see you next? Take the center stage, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at the KATY REX. My animals, my small zoo does have its own Instagram account, zoo.rex. So if you don't actually want to follow my writing and you just want to see cute bearded dragons, I totally support that. I am also at katyrex.com. I don't think I'll be going to any conventions in the near future because I don't think those will exist for a while. But when they do, I hope to go to many more conventions and see and meet many more people.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Katy. It was a pleasure
Thanks for
having
having
you.
me.
Absolutely. And I wish you the best of luck with everything. Stick backstage and I'll be right there.
All right.
Just would like to chat with you one more time. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah. What an episode. So glad to have Katy in the house. I learned a lot from her today, and I really hope you guys did too. We are going to wrap up now, and tomorrow we got another guest. You guys will find out in the morning who it is. I'm actually going to be on Mike Watson's Chat and Draw tomorrow at the time of the show. So Onward with Onrie will take place a little bit later tomorrow to accommodate the needs of our special guest, who I will tell you about in the morning. So I'll see you guys then. And until that time comes, onward to victory.